Well, it's a job interview, and you want to climb into the mind of the interviewer. Probably you do, if you want the job. If you're going for a job just for practice, good, probably a great idea. Job interview, practicing, best place to do it in job interviews, provided you can get a job interview. Job interviews are not that easy to get, even with a very good resume. Even with just well written cover letter and a good resume, even if you're skilled and you're talented and everything they want, they've got so many numbers out there. They can be very picky. And one of the ways in which they can be picky, one of the qualities that they use to judge in the mind of the interviewer, well, it's probably more the mind of the person who sifts through all of these resumes and then hands it to the interviewer. If you make that cut, the unspoken cut, then it's handed, the resume is handed to the interviewer, and he takes a look at it, or she takes a look at it and says, spelled his name wrong. Watch the spellings. Spell the name of the interviewer properly. If you're going to do that, more likely you're going to say, to whom this may concern, each word capitalized, by the way, to whom, W, this, T, may, M, concern, C, all capitalized, colon. Then, of course, you're going to submit a very nice cover letter. Why? Well, it's how we do things formally. Actually, I happen to have one right here. Let's see if I can share the screen. Right there. Okay. When we share this, you'll see that we keep things very clean. This is a cover letter is a cover for the resume, and it may or may not be read, as may or may not be, as the resume may or may not be read. It has to be offered, and it has to be clean. Whatever you write has to be clean. That's our premise. In this case, I'm going to give you a fictitious name and a fictitious job, and I'm going to pimp the Delta Airlines moniker. Dear Mr. Jones, I'm responding to your recent job posting for the position of aviation technician, aviation mechanic, whatever the heck that position was. You list that in the first sentence. There could be 20 other jobs being advertised, certainly by an airlines. That's why you will do a good job to state it right in the beginning, and they who read will read this and say, oh, this is going in this stack. All right. As a recent graduate from the Airframe and Power Plant Certificate Program at Spartan College of Aeronautics and Technology, all that has to be spelled properly, comma, I qualify for the duties advertised in the job posting. I have attached a resume in the hope of demonstrating why I might prove to be the most valuable, best suited for this position. Okay, I might prove most valuable and best suited for this position. Man, can't possibly let that go by. That's what editing does, huh? Well, look at that. We're always editing. We're always looking at our stuff. We're always reading our stuff. Hey, and if you want practice editing, just start reading things backwards. Because probably a good way to break out of the habit of correcting things or reading them correctly when they're not written correctly, just as I did. Now, I'm an editor, so I spend time, I always pay attention to that. But look, I set that down wrong, so I must not have paid attention then. All right. Anyway, what we're after is making sure there are no errors. That's the key. And as you can tell, it's a good habit of mine. Always, 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 even though it was done, make sure that you did it right. How does writing sound like aviation mechanics? Details, details, details. That's an example of it. You can see the rest of this, and anytime I send this over to you, you can find that all it does is reiterate very briefly some of my best qualities, or yours if you write this. And finally, of course, I hope to advance into a position of appropriately growing responsibilities. That would be me, because it's my it's not my very first, it's your very first, and that would mean I probably would write something along the lines of, I'm very excited to be considered for this important position. And I'm hoping we can arrange a personal interview where I can answer a wide variety of questions. Hey, respectfully, look, make a neat letter. It can be sort of like this one if you'd like. All right. Climbing into the mind. Climbing into the mind. He needs a person. She needs a person. They need someone in that position. Why are they going to take you? And that person who's interviewing you does not have the time of day to do the interview. That's the truth. The truth is, anybody who performs interviews doesn't have the time to do them. That's not his or her full-time job, interviewing potential candidates. His or her job is managing the people he or she's got, is doing the work for the person, depending on what job you're looking at, for whom you are expecting to work. Maybe it's a small operation, who even less reason to have the time to spend doing this activity. No one who interviews particularly wants to interview, even though he or she needs to perform the interview, and that's what brings you both into this room. So, keeping that in mind, don't really expect them to have read your resume. Your resume, of course, you crafted nicely, and you did not perform this with any errors, any glaring errors, spelling errors, any kind of errors. It's organized nicely. We have another tape on resumes, and you will perform it properly using that resume tape video. You'll understand why it is we use this format. That format is very good for the eyes. It's going to pull the reader in, and the reason I'm flailing this little paper resume is because that is the way to hand it to the person, to get that person to take you. Hand the paper to the person in your job interview. Hand that person your resume. Hand it to the person. He's got you. She's got you. This is yours. And you're prepared, and it's nice paper, not this crap I've given you here. Nice resume paper called LAID, laid paper. It's a nice quality paper. It sometimes has a watermark in it. It makes the person want to hold you. That's the psychology behind being a very good interviewee, is being prepared, throwing to that person your good preparation, especially in our tasks as aviation mechanics. You have to demonstrate you are prepared. Why not demonstrate that by handing that resume to him, her, and his or her several other fellow interviewers who you did not expect to see that day? Carry 4 resumes into the job interview. What is going on in the mind of the interviewer? He glances your resume, glances it. Might be the only time he or she has looked at it. Why? don't have the time to do that stuff. My assistant looked through them. I have a pile of resumes electronically sent to me. I glanced them. I looked. I have 200 resumes. They're all teachers. I throw out the ones that have a misspelling in them. If you're a teacher, you can't misspell. Sorry. It's the way I was. Why? I had 200. I threw away 150 of them that way. Why? I didn't like the format. You're going to teach how to do resumes? You better know what the right format is for them, for my students, because they don't know. And I had the advantage of being employed as a resume writer professionally at some point in my life, and as a writer of many other items, newspapers for one. Having been a writer, having been a teacher of writing, having all of those experiences, having worked, having applied for work, having applied for a resume writing job, I think I learned a little bit, plus with the experience, did ask the fella, hey, why'd you hire me? Your resume was perfect. Thank you. Why wouldn't you select somebody with a good resume? It just makes good sense. Why wouldn't you want to put out a very good resume as an aviation mechanic? It just is a good reflection on who you are. And believe me, it's better to put out a good product as a reflection than anything else. It speaks oodles, all right? It speaks. A good-looking resume speaks to the reader, even if he or she doesn't really read it, but glances it and reads only the bullets. And that's the reason you are there, for that person to have a quick and good relationship with you. And how you do it is you share with that person your resume. And your resume looks something like this. If my screen will cooperate with me, I'll just put her out there for you any minute now. If I can get the darn thing to print. Oh gosh, the toolbar gets in the way all the time. Let me move this toolbar. All right, now I can get this darn thing to you. Very good. Okay. I got the toolbar smack dab in the middle. That's awesome. Thank you, Zoom. Okay. Toolbar smack dab in the middle. Man. All right, here we go. We're looking at a resume, hopefully. There it is. And I'm not going to spend time with this resume. I did that in another video, but I did want to say the reason why we're climbing into the person's mind who's interviewing you is because we want to see what he's reading. Oh, you wrote it. He or she is reading these 5 bullets. You better know what's on those 5 bullets, because those are your first questions, or they can be among the first questions, or any one of them can be a bullet that attracts the eye of the reader, the interviewer who's reading it. If you don't know what those 5 bullets are, well, you're just not prepared. You wrote them. You better care about them and change them for the different jobs that are available. Maybe one job is going to have you writing resumes. I don't know. It's going to have you writing instructions for the different improvements in the manufacturing manual that you've got. I know I had to write improvements for manufacturing instructions. Sure did. Why? Because I could write. And so this is going to reflect that you know how to write, and he or she who's reading it will decide, hey, this guy probably could do this job, or look at blueprints, because that's the first thing I listed here. Well, it's a second thing. Familiar with interpreting blueprints. Well, heck, that qualifies this person right away. He or she is an inspector. I know that. That's what the reader is saying. I know, because I interviewed for a job once, And I had blueprint reading right at the front. And guess what we did for the first 2-3 weeks of preparation? Before I was an inspector, I was reading blueprints all day. They were paying me to read blueprints. That's why I put that up there, so they would pay me to read blueprints. Well, it sort of works that way. That's what a resume is supposed to do. It's supposed to put the bug in their mind that you're not only prepared, but you can do a few things that this person thinks would be pretty handy if you knew how to do them. And oh, by the way, I might like this person sitting across from me who I am interviewing. And that's a good thing, because I might see this person for the next 5 years. I might have to like the person. Hey, this is all just the preparation. We haven't even begun to talk about the questions. The questions, well, you all know what the questions are, so why don't you know the answers? I know you're listening to the video to get the answers, aren't you? Well, there are general questions, and then there are aviation questions. Let's look at it that way. Oh, and then there are the questions that you will have to ask. 3 groups of questions. Thank you. You know what they are. Oh, in case you can't remember them or you don't want to, prepare yourself for this one. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Or it could sound like this. So, what makes you think you could work for us? Or it might say, how would you describe yourself? Or it might be something like that. It's an open-ended question close to the beginning. He or she who's interviewing you might have said something like, well, so did you have any trouble getting here? No, I've got a GPS. I looked at the map before everything is answered in a way that makes you sound like you wanted the job and you qualified for it, because you looked it up on a map before you went out there. You didn't just wait for your GPS. I've been planning this, is what you're saying. I've been thinking about this, is what he or she wants to hear. Why is he going to hire somebody who doesn't give a bit of concern in advance for his or her actions? Planning. Tell me about yourself. Well, I'm a recent graduate from Spartan. Over there, we have classes that are both in a classroom and in a lab. Now, of course, with COVID, we've had some changes to that, but it's still roughly the same plan, where we got a pile of theory and a bunch of lab work. And we've been able to do both of those. Talking wishfully, and of course, aside to you, the COVID question strikes me as a very provocative question, especially for aviation. Let me come back to that. So the very first question, the opening question, is why should I hire you? Really? Some people actually say that. Why should I hire you? Some people say, tell me about yourself. It's a little nicer. It's saying the same damn thing. I went to college over at Spartan, and we had both labs and theory. And because of that, and I don't even have to talk about COVID, I could say, and because I had both lab and theory, I got a good theoretical understanding, worked in the lab, worked along in teams, worked individually, had deadlines and met them all, worked on small planes, repaired, and then, oh, by the way, my favorite project, I don't know what it is, I like the one where we removed an old propeller, but I don't particularly say that one, because I think about the job for which I'm being hired, and I try to find the project that seems to capture the imagination of the interviewer. So if I'm thinking I might be working in a repair shop, and that repair shop does fuel metering stuff, then I'll talk about carburetors. You know, I like carburetors a lot. I happen to teach courses with carburetors. But for you, it might be carburetors struck me as really neat, you know. Worked on cars, and There are fewer and fewer cars with carburetors, you know, but still like them. As a matter of fact, have one sitting right here. No, you can't say that to them. You can only say the things you like, the things you did, the things you draw the interviewer into you, okay, into your life, into why that person likes you. You have to let that person like you. How would you do that? You talk about something real. That's it. Oh, tell them a little bit about yourself. I attended Spartan, and I got to tell you, over there we learned both theory, and we had labs where we did actual projects that might actually be done out there in the real world, and we were, you know, signed off on those by A&P Mechanics. Hey, I really liked that project where I got to tear apart carburetors. You know, carburetors are pretty simple and clean once you know what's going on. I kind of like them. And it transfers to a lot of other things. I know that my teacher showed me automobile carburetor, a downdraft carburetor. Oh, there's a term. You might get some specifics were in there. You know, even though aviation, even though old school planes are really updraft carburetors, usually there are a few downdraft pressure carbs and the like. But I got to tell you, I kind of liked them. All right. Any of that you could steal, that would work. It would give them details. Hey, that's the first question. You answer the question fully. Don't make them draw it out of you. Let the person who's interviewing you sit back and listen to your story. Tell them a story. Tell them the story. Tell them your story. Might be the only time you get to talk to the person outside of the Christmas party. You know what I'm saying? But if you get to go to the Christmas party, I'd say we succeeded, right? All right, first question. You know the scheme. Mention your college. Why? Because you're being interviewed largely because they trust the college. There were days you didn't want to go to college, but you're not there to complain about them. You're there to brag about the things you learned. Complain if you want about how good it was and how I wish I could stay there another couple more months. I kind of like going to school. About the only time I had some peace and quiet and selfishly could study. You probably don't want to say that to them, but you might. God, I liked studying planes. When else can I do it? I got kids. I can't wait to get out to work so I can stand around planes, look at those propellers, look at the, I just like them. But I'm getting back to the story part of it. And that's the key. Because the last question they're going to ask you, or maybe somewhere around the middle, they're going to say, whatever got you interested in planes? Whatever got you interested in this field? That's the storytelling. You get to tell them whatever got you interested in it. You may not have even thought of it yourself. I know what got me interested in planes when I was 4 years old in 1959. We went to Teterboro Airport and looked at a couple of jets. It was pretty rare back then. And we just said, look at the jets. Listen, aren't they loud? And we were just kids, children, babies. But there was something impressive. You know, flash forward to 1975, sitting on the runway at Heathrow Airport, flying back to New Jersey. Holy crow, a supersonic plane took off. Wow. The pilot stopped and said, ladies and gentlemen, look out your left window over here at Heathrow. On runway such and such, you'll see history being made, a supersonic plane. You know, You just have to stop and think about why you like this stuff. What is so cool about 1950s technology, planes that look like, I don't know, motorcycles? Find something. Whatever got me interested in planes. Find something to tell them. Talk to them. Take your time. They asked you. Let them hear it. They asked you. They may ask you a couple other things too. They're not going to have to ask you about your passion, because you're going to tell them the stories and they're going to see that you love it. If you can think long enough about why you like planes, why do you like them so much? Find that thing, tell them. Your passion will become real obvious. Now, they're probably going to ask you your greatest strength, but they even more likely might say, what's your greatest weakness? Man, love that question, because I know they're going to ask it. And of course, the goal of answering what your greatest weakness is to tell them a weakness that really ain't one. You know, I have to tell you what my weakness is. I do a pretty good job. Okay, I'm comfortable being me, doing good work. When the work is finally done, I'm comfortable. I might cuss like a sailor while I'm trying to get it right. But the truth is, I like being inside this skin, because I usually come up with good stuff in spite of all the aggravation. And nevertheless, I can be told it's good by my boss. But I'm driving on the way home after I'm told this is good work. And I'm still thinking, what the heck could I have done to improve that thing? I'm still looking at the thing that I did not so well. Not as perfectly as I wished. I'm still thinking about what was wrong. I just don't know when to put it to bed. It's already in bed. And if that's a fault, that's the fault they want to hear. Let them think about it. That's not really a fault. Oh, sure it is if you're well overdriven and you end up in a hospital going cuckoo. But let's be honest. Don't you want to work with people who don't put the work to bed? Wouldn't that excite you every day to come to work with a buddy who said, man, you know what I was thinking of last night? I was thinking of this freaking cool V12. And did we check the blankety blank on that? It just draws you into work. It makes the work fly away. You're done. You're done before you even know you started. If work is exciting, you want to be there. So I guess what I'm saying is, transmit your happiness. Transmit what makes you want to do your work. Let them know that. So your greatest weakness should be your greatest strength. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Easy question. I see myself growing with this position and becoming of greater service to you. And, I guess you hear that a lot, but I really want to be such a good mechanic, such a good whatever, that if you have a problem in 5 years, I'd be the go-to guy. I'd be the guy you go to solve that problem. That's the job I want to be. Okay, that's the answer for your job. All right, I've talked about a number of those for you, but I haven't talked about a number of the aviation questions. I'll just detail a couple for you right here. What do you think about when I say the word safety? That's going to show up. Something like that. We're in aviation. It's going to be S-A-F-E-T-Y, okay? It's going to be safety. something is going to be safe, safe, safe. It's going to be safety this or safety that. We're in aviation. It's going to be safety. Every time you drive past the Northrop Grumman building, every time you drive past anything that is aviation, you're going to see safety. The word safety on a sign, on a team sign, safety takes teamwork. That's one of them over here. Safety is no accident. You've seen that. Is no accident. You're going to see the word safety. They're going to ask you a question. Safety. What does safety mean to you? Bet you're wondering what it means to you. It means washing your hands now. This is why the COVID question becomes aviation. Sure as hell it does. Everything about aviation is safety. What do you think COVID taught you? Huh? Safety. Details. Oh, I begged my students to wash their hands every time they were in lab. Every time I begged them. Please wash your hands. You'll never know what you pick up and put in your eye. You'll never know what you picked up and splinter you put in your mouth. You'll never know until you find out. Always wash your hands, regardless of COVID. Always wash your hands. Be careful out there. That's what safety is. Being safety now, of course, when the day of COVID means you're stuck at home. Be safe. Clear a path. Make sure there's no garbage that you're going to step on. Fall over and bust an ankle. Watch out. That's what safety means now. What did safety mean to you? It meant that all that stuff that COVID taught us, it reminded me. Heck, safety means being prepared. Safety means getting your instructions and reading. Safety means that we are better aviation mechanics because we sat down and we studied online. Safety means we are focused on our mission. We don't get interrupted. We set aside our problems. Everybody has them. And everybody who's successful puts them in their proper place. Safety, it doesn't mean an awful lot. It means everything. Safety. It's our lives, okay? So safety is a grave question, and we are trying to avoid the grave. I don't know that I would try to be funny in a job interview. I don't know that I can avoid being funny. It's just, you know, sometimes it just feels right. And in a job interview, it probably won't. But don't strike it out of your collection. Is there something you're not particularly good at? Well, I had a student once say a very good line. You know, I'm about 5'6". I'm not good at reaching the top shelf. Oh, there's a step stool around because I want to be safe. See, it's not really that we're so funny, but we're clever. All right, so that's a group of questions about safety. I would expect those high on my list if I was doing an aviation interview. Sure as hell would. What do you know about our airline? What do you know about this job? What do you know about is the question. The other question that you can expect. What do you know about us? What do you know about? And sometimes that's an easy one to answer because you can look it up. And if you look it up, then you'll be prepared. And if you don't look it up, then you have no business interviewing. There's no business wasting your time and their time. Let's interview with some responsibility. Try to find out that which you can. I don't know too much about you. Is okay. but I can gather from what I saw a certain amount of ideas. We're going to work on such and such. We're going to work on, we are, plural, plural first person, not I, we, right? We are working together on this. We're working right now, you and I. So I think we can expect a good amount of small plane work. Oh, I think we can expect jobs being handed by a foreman of some sort, and that's how that one has to be answered, okay? So what do you know about us? Hey, I read a little bit about this over here. You know, it was kind of hard to see who I was interviewing for, but I was able to gather this, all right? I know you're the leading airline, and you're the one that I want to work for. Yeah. You know, it's canned, and yet it's real. You know, you both are prepared for the answer, but you're not prepared for how it's going to come out. You're prepared because you know yourself, but you don't know, you've never had to say it to somebody. You're prepared, and you're prepared to say it, but you don't know the mystery is that you don't know how it's going to come out, and it's going to be real when it does. And you might be moved yourself if you think about who you are and why you're interviewing for the very best airline in the world. I can put myself in your shoes. And you ought to feel like your job that you're interviewing for is the best thing that ever happened to you, just like my job. Put yourself forward, fast forward, live ahead, figure out what the hell's going to happen when you get this job. Put that out there. You know what's going to happen when you get the job, not if you get the job, when. In your mind, in your heart, you feel this is for you. If you don't get the job, it's great rehearsal for the next one. You'll get good at rehearsing in this time, in this life, okay? You'll get good at rehearsing job interviews because there'll be plenty out there. But if you do it right, you'll start to cinch them a lot better very quickly. Be who you are. You don't want to be the other guy. You want to be you doing the job. Which reminds me, how could you see, you know, how could you see yourself in 5 years? That question. There are spin-off questions like that. They could ask you something like, what was your most difficult decision? You may have to have something ready on that line. Is there anything I should know about you? These are sort of personal things, right? They're going to ask you. And of course, remember, they're in a position that they have to spend the next 5 years with you in their minds. Is there anything I should know about you? Well, this is always a job interview question. In other words, you're always trying to reveal to them the right information so that they're getting the right candidate. How do you react under pressure? Perhaps something like that. You know, again, we're prepared, but we don't know what we're going to say exactly. So if somebody asks me how I work under pressure, I might give them an example. You know, there was a time when, and I could have probably done better if, these are kind of the lines, right? How do you work under pressure? We had to adapt during the day of COVID. We adapted. We didn't have time to react with panic. We didn't have time to panic. Maybe that's a good line to tell somebody. There's no time to panic. We just have to react. We have to use our skills. I've been selected because I know what I'm doing. But I've never faced this before. So how do you know what you're doing? The issue ultimately is you have a skill set in your hands, in your whole arm, in the whole body, in your brain. You have a skill set. You don't know what a plane looks like. You don't know what that plane looks like. You don't know what that engine looks like, but you have a skill set. So that makes you ready. You see, so how do I react under pressure is sort of the same question. I have a skill set. You probably have another question coming at you that sounds like this. Do you have any questions for me? You better have a question for them. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You better have a question if they ask that question. And they will ask it. And the question that you respond with is, about how often is my work evaluated? Who evaluates my work? That's your back pocket question. You got that one handy. That's the first thing that pops out of your mind. Yeah. It don't make any difference. It makes no difference what the question is. Better be competent. Might as well be that question. Might as well be a competent question. No, you're not asking them about the benefits. No, that's garbage. That's a personnel question. That's not a job interview question. Unless, of course, you have two jobs waiting for you and you want to compare them and not get the one you're interviewing for. If you got two jobs waiting for you, it's because you're pretty good. And you're really good if you're taking a third interview because you're smart. It's always smart to interview. Whenever somebody can interview you, you take it. It's good training. You should remain very much at the top of your game. You should become very comfortable being articulate. Well, I've taken your time. And there are still other questions for another video.